Hello, this is Angelia with today's wisdom. Today's wisdom comes from De Leon, knowing better now, the past in light of the present. When we look back at the past, knowing what we know now, we often find it difficult to understand how we made the mistakes we made. As I say, hindsight is 2020. This is because once we learn new information, it is nearly impossible to re-enter the headspace we were in before we learned that information. And I know that is true. And so we look back at parents who spank their kids, for example, and wonder how they could have thought that was a good idea. And there were generations who thought that was a good idea. It was all about the control. And they were kind of missing the fact that, what you're teaching your kids is might makes right. And that if you can't control someone for some reason, you beat them. And then we wonder why, domestic abuse became such a commonplace thing in America. And the world, really. Similarly, our personal pasts are full of mistakes we can't believe we made, such as, being with a love interest that end up being such a horrible, terrible person, and you're like, why? I should have seen the signs on that one. And saying things to people that at the time you thought were no big deal or funny or whatever. And then later on, as you learned a little more emotional maturity, you're like, ooh, that was cringy. I wish I hadn't said that to them. I didn't mean it, but it's said, so you can't take it back. We did things then that we would never do now. And this is precisely because we have information now that we didn't have or weren't able to access then, because you can't know a thing until you know a thing. From ideas about how to raise children and to how to treat the environment, our collective human past sometimes reads like a document on what not to do. And that's what, I tell my kids, learn from our mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes. Don't do the same things they did and think you're going to have a different outcome. I mean, that's kind of the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. There's got to be some tweaking there. In many ways, this is exactly as it should be, because you do learn from your mistakes. We learn from living and having experiences. It is from these past actions that we garnered the information that guides us to live differently now. Because you should change. You're always learning and growing from the day you're born. You learn from your mistakes and other people's mistakes. So you should be changing constantly. If you're stagnant and you're not learning anything new and you're not changing, that says you're kind of an ignorant person liking to be stuck where you are and not wanting to change. And there are people like that. I personally don't get it, but we should be learning. Excuse me. Oh gosh. Just so in our personal lives, we probably had to have a few unsuccessful relationships or jobs, learning about our negative tendencies through them in order to gain the wisdom we have now. And that's certainly the case. I have some failed relationships underneath my belt, and learned about what I will and will not accept from my partner, and what type of person that I want to be with, and that nobody is good enough for me to put up with stuff that I shouldn't be putting up with, that makes me feel like I'm less than good enough for another person, because I'm good enough for others. They can accept me as I am. And of course, jobs. Yes, I've had some great jobs that I really loved and hated to leave, but I've had some other jobs that were not so great, and it was all I could do to hang on before I had finally had it up to here and said, that's it, I'm done, I'm walking out the door, this is insanity, your circus, your monkeys, I'm done. In order to live more peacefully with the past, it helps to remember that once we know better, we tend to do better. Because, of course, you know, as you have to teach children, don't touch hot things, don't jump off high places, or you break your arm or leg. You need to learn how to do better. And you don't know that until you make mistakes. So, in making mistakes, we actually learn how not to do something. Prior to knowing, we generally do our best, and while it's true that from the perspective of the present, our best doesn't always seem good enough, we can at least give our past selves the benefit of the doubt. And that's because we know that we didn't have the information then that we have now. And there are people who I've met who, well, there's people actually in my family who still judge me that I wasn't in their life all the time. And then when I came back into the life when I was 9 years old, they still judge me based on my 9-year-old self. Now, I've done a lot of growing since I was 9 years old. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically since I was 9 years old. But they still relate to me as if I was the person I was when I was 9 years old. Thankfully, I am not. Good gosh, I would not be happy with myself at all. And there are people from school who relate to me on the level, like I went back for a 10-year reunion, and then one person was like, oh man, you were so crazy, you were so, and it's like, well, yeah, I probably was, but evidently there was more things said than actually probably happened. But I'm not the same person I was when I was 14 to 17 years old, thank goodness. And even people who knew me in my 20s, I was kind of enjoying partying and having fun and other things. And I'm certainly not that person anymore either. So, I'm glad that I grew and learned. But yeah, hindsight's 2020. I made some mistakes back along the line that I would have preferred not to. But I did learn from those mistakes, so they were helpful. We did our best with what knowledge we had, and that's true. Because, like I said, you can't know a thing until you know your thing. So you're doing the best you can at that point in time. Now it's up to you when you learn a thing to do better. Beyond this, we serve the greater good most effectively by not dwelling on the past. Instead, excuse me, raining our energy and knowledge into our present actions. And that's the thing. You can't dwell on what so-and-so did to you in, 7th grade. You can't dwell on what you did, what you said to someone in 9th grade that you wish you hadn't said. But from now on, you can do better because you know better. It is here, in this moment, that we create our reality and ourselves anew with our current knowledge and information. Because, like I said, you should be learning, and learning leads to changes, and so you should always be changing. From the day you're born to the day you check out, you should always be growing and learning and changing. That's it. We're supposed to evolve and become better people, so we can go and be with God someday where He wants us to be. So, when you look at your past and light of the present, you know that you know better now. So, that's the behavior that you should be working from. And of course, sometimes we backslide, but that's okay. Give yourself a break and get back up and try again. Think about it. That's all for now.